Hi. So now I would define violence as an action or um, expression, and then even possibly non-action of often intentional but also unintentional behaviors aimed at either controlling the situation or controlling people, um, or even just things. How I defined it in the beginning of the class was conflict between two opposing forces. And that necessarily have to be two different people or two different entities. It could be, my thoughts versus my actions, and how they clash, and then just how I would express them within myself or even outside of that. Um, what changed in my definition really was looking, or at least specifically remembering the video that we watched about the war in Liberia, and how the people and the impoverished villages were treated, raped, and murdered, and even the youth, were who were responsible for a lot of the violence were also victims of violence themselves. Um, so I think that, and even other videos also reminded me, or at least showed me, or gave me a more in-depth look of what it looks like. Because to define it is easy, but then when you actually see details um, of what violence is, it's way more in depth than just two opposing forces. Because some of the people, were not a force at all, right? They just happened to be there, and they became victims as a result of being present. What do I believe is the cause of violence? I think that's the same. I think in the beginning, I said it was greed, control over people, control over resources, um, whether it's on a corporation level, um, or even just as an individual. I think I would say that all of them are still in the same vein. It's just shown differently. Whereas if you're a corporation, you won't necessarily have to be physically violent. That's where policies come into place. That's where politics come into place, where verbiage can be the violence, could be the way to harm, or even allow things to happen. And then you go down and you talk about like personal relationships. Even going like to a story that was in the text about the lawyer having an affair with one of the women, and she held on pretty tight, and there wasn't a physical violence, but you know the effects that it had on her, on him, and even on the coworkers. Just as an example of that, or even so it's a lot. um, I think that my perspective on why and how is pretty consistent. I would say the details, as we saw in different scenarios of it playing out, I think that more so opened my mind on how it could actually happen, instead of just a simple thing of you know